Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon. So here it is, people, finally the end of season 1, Star Trek, Starfleet Academy. I hope everybody got the opportunity to see those 10 episodes of Star Trek, Starfleet Academy before watching this video, because this video is going to be filled with spoilers, but you guys know how I roll. So look, let's just get right into it. As I was saying, this season of Star Trek Starfleet Academy was 10 episodes long, a far cry from the normal 22 to 24 episodes that we would get in classic Trek. Now, that will be a hindrance for Star Trek Starfleet Academy coming up, but I'll get into that later. First of all, let's get into my favorite episode of the first season, and that was Vox in Excelso. My worst episodes of season 1, and it is 2 of them because they are linked together and they are a 2-part episode, and that was episode 9, 300, and episode 10, Rubicon. So let's get into the team behind Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Let's talk about the production. First of all, the production was top notch, top tier, movie level CGI and production. The sets were great. The Athena design was a beauty. Look, let me tell you something. I already said the Athena was a beautiful ship. I loved all of the set pieces. I love the Earth CG, everything that they had going on with that. Like everything that they put into this show was top notch production. The score in some of the episodes, again, top notch. I love some of the music selections that they had in season 1 of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Things that weren't usually your conventional orchestral type arrangement, things like that, regular songs that fit the characters and the moods that was going on in each particular scene. The costume designs were also great. We had a variety of Starfleet uniforms to choose from. Now, we could get into how the department colors wasn't really pronounced in this season of Star Trek Starfleet Academy, but that's besides the point. We're talking about the costume designs. The costume designs, the makeup, all of those types of things, again, were top notch as far as Star Trek goes. As far as the instructors and basically the senior bridge crew of the Athena and the Academy itself, we got Captain Nala Ake, we got Laura Thok, which very interesting character. She's a Klingon hybrid mix, but we'll get into that a little bit later. We got Janet Reno. Basically, as I can discover it, is playing herself in Star Trek. We also, of course, have the EMH, the Doctor, making his appearances in several episodes of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. For the notable students in season 1, we got Caleb, Genesis, Jaden, Tamira, the series acclamation meal. Yeah, series acclamation meal. And we also got the fish dude whose name is Aaron Ramey. That's his name. And I'm going to get into his particular character a little bit later as well. We have special appearance characters, people like Admiral Vance and Tilly and Dax. But again, I'm going to get into that. Now, basically, some of the themes covered in season 1 of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. One was family separation by the state, self-identity and mixed identity, indoctrination and teamwork, self-determination and also self-acceptance. Normal themes that have been basically covered in canon in various different iterations and storylines throughout Star Trek canon. So this is nothing new, these particular themes being covered in Star Trek. Now, that being said, how effective were the writers of this season of Star Trek Starfleet Academy in expressing those particular themes? For me, there was no real use of allegory or metaphor when it came to a lot of the themes and subject matters that they were trying to cover. I believe that's where they get the interpretation of, we got the politics right there in your face. It's hard hitting, it's unavoidable. A lot of well-written classic Star Trek storylines that involved heavy themes or heavy circumstances had a lot of metaphor and allegory in it to where you can make those interpretations without them hitting you over the head so much. That being said, when they touched on those various different themes, it seemed shallow, like they didn't really want to offend anybody. Like every day they were looking at social media or at the tabloids or whatever, and tabloids, I'm showing my age, and seeing what people had to say and kind of trying to write to please everybody. it being Star Trek Starfleet Academy, right? They didn't have too many situations that they could use for learning opportunities. There were several, but uh, it didn't really get into what I was expecting from a Star Trek Starfleet Academy show. And I'll get into that like I was saying. For instance, when I talk about allegory and metaphor, think about the episode Vox in Excelso. Think about all of the allegory between the hunt, the bow, the bird of prey, and everything like that. The warrior's soup, all of those different things. You know how the Federation and the Klingons resolve this conflict using by understanding the culture. Think about the dynamics of the debate and the debate structure that was used in that episode. All of these things were very Trek, meaning that they expressed their point using allegory and metaphor very well. Let's talk about some traditional Star Trek things that were either underused or not used at all in this season of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Right off the bat, let's talk about the fact that we didn't see the Athena's warp core. And if we did, I totally missed it. It wasn't a traditional engineering section or engineering room. I would have loved to see what 800 plus years in the future engineering technology as far as propulsion would look like nowadays. Well, not nowadays, in that canon of Star Trek. And we didn't really get to see that. We also really didn't get to go into Laura Thock's story. We got a little bit in Vox and Excelso that her parents, the dynamics between her parents, but I would have really loved to dive way deeper into her stories simply because of how it breaks established canon, like the degree of which it breaks established canon, considering the fact that there is no such thing as female Jem'Hadar, and to our knowledge, the Jem'Hadar have never been shown to reproduce in a fashion of being, needing a couple, right? They use Hus. So I really wish that they would have got more into her family lore and how that took place, using flashbacks, whatever. Another thing that was underused was the Athena's crew. In the first episode, we got to meet some high speed individuals that were standing up, introducing themselves and all that kind of stuff. They looked super professional, super Starfleet, like they knew they looked like they were experts, right? And then we really never got to see them again. Another thing that we didn't really get to see again was the instructor that was basically her role was basically to say, okay, we're going to use these types of things for instruction opportunity. I was really looking forward to them examining and going into that position and its use with the cadets. This was another thing I was mentioning early. Clear department separation by color coding. In all Star Trek series, you were able to be like, okay, this person is engineering, that person is science, this person is medical, that person is command. In Star Trek Starfleet Academy, I really didn't get to see um that color dynamic, and if it was there, I wish they would have expressed it a lot more, went a lot more into the dynamics of each section and why they're important. And another thing that I didn't expect is when Athena was on Earth, and they went out, partying and everything that night. I really didn't expect that because the effects of the burn would have changed the dynamics on Earth tremendously, right? Because of no trade, no support, not to mention all of the enemies that would have loved to have targeted Earth being the center point of the Federation in the first place, right? You would think that Earth would have been broken down back into factions and infighting. They would have brought back, say, capitalism. This would have been a great opportunity to show Earth in its current environment, but using Star Trek again with those metaphors and allegories that Star Trek is known for. So that being said, what did I expect from this show? When I first, seen the trailer, I heard everything about this show. What did I expect? I'm gonna tell you what I expected. What I expected was a show that focused on the trials, dramas, science of young individuals in a scientific or in a STEM environment. Basically that. All right. So basically, I wanted to see cadets, dealing with, the drama of each other, instructors, maybe tests, exams, those types of things. We didn't really get that. It seemed like we were starting to get that, but it went off the fray. I love the dynamic between Starfleet and the War College, but I would have loved to have seen them try to integrate a lot more instead of them being, even though it was kind of playful at each other as they were. Okay. I would have loved to have seen, maybe teacher discussions on how the students were doing and if they were going to pass, things they can do to help them and progress them along, all while expressing and showing the values of what it means to be in Starfleet. Maybe even some mysteries and drama. Somebody does an experiment that goes awry. Hell, Wesley Crusher was known for experiments that'll go awry, and he'll do some crazy stuff. We could have these types of things. We could have had these types of things in Star Trek Starfleet Academy. With the incorporation of the Athena, we could have went on away missions, basic away missions, figuring out how to, deal with different scientific endeavors there, maybe even meet some cultures that we have already met and figure out how the cadets deal with those, maybe some space anomalies, nothing too big, because again, these are Starfleet cadets. And if something big broke out, right, then the Athena senior crew and the instructors would deal with it. One of the people that I didn't mention as far as a special appearance and special guest was, of course, Paul Giamatti, right, as Luca, something like that. But look, let me tell you something. Every time he was on the screen, I just got a chuckle. That dude was straight. You could tell he loves Star Trek and really studied the original series as far as the overacting and the embellishment went. I wanted to see a show centered on from the viewpoint of young cadets in Starfleet as the Federation was rebuilding itself after the effects of the burn, since the burn was something that we just really needed to have in Star Trek canon. Now, I've talked about what I expected and some of the things that I didn't like. What did I like about season 1 of Star Trek Starfleet Academy? Again, like I said, I love the production. I love the score, love the costumes. I found most episodes of Star Trek Starfleet Academy to be very entertaining and kept me intrigued and looking forward to seeing the next episode. I really dug Holly Hunter as Captain Ake. I really loved the presence that she brought into the character. I loved how from one moment she could be, lazy daxical and everything like that. And the next minute she could be extremely serious, and how she was able to carry so much gravitas and emotion just with facial expressions, right? Like she truly expressed what it means to be somebody who is ancient. Think of, for instance, the doctor. Think of how at times, hey, you want a jelly baby? And then the next time, he's basically eliminating entire worldly threats and armies are running away from just the mention of his name, right? Think of characters think of people who are ancient have this dynamic about them, and I'm glad that they brought that dynamic to her. Another standout to me was Sam. Look, I got a kick out of Sam's enjoyment of life, Sam's enthusiasm, Sam's just naivete. She was just always happy, no matter what the situation was, no matter, what was going on. She always had this optimism and happiness. And every time she was on the screen, she was just a joy. Now, the caveat with that is when she ends up basically living a life with the doctor and having to integrate those experiences with what she experienced when she didn't have those experiences, right? She became a little bland to me after that. I dug the Athena. I dug the whole little Athena insignia. I like the fact that it looks like they were getting back to having uh, uh, individualized insignia for each ship. Look, I love that. I love the initial crew of the Athena, even though we didn't get to see them do anything. That episode right there put an impression on me for like, man, I wonder where they went. I wonder, so that means that at least their introduction carried some gravitas. I also like the initial premise that they was going with, or that they were going to go with the show. Being that hey, we're going to take it back to, we're going to take Starfleet back to its roots, show what it's like to be a Starfleet officer, talk about, the dynamics and, the honor, integrity, all of those things that make a Starfleet officer a Starfleet officer. Now, the caveat of that is they start to get away from that just a little bit towards the end of the series. And of course, I dug Laura Thok, even though she wasn't too much really in the series and too many episodes, right? And for some strange reason, whenever there seemed to have been any fighting or battling or anything that would require the expertise of somebody like a Klingon Jem'Hadar hybrid, arguably two of the most well-known battle-capable warrior species in Trek, they got together and had this high-speed Laura Thok. I was expecting to see Laura running around doing some, today is a good day to, I was expecting another thing. Did she have white blood? Like, is they blood catcher cell white? Like, I have way too many questions that should be getting asked. And that's what I was talking about early on in this video when I was saying that that's a drawback of new Trek. Because even though there were a lot of episodes and a lot of Star Trek first seasons that were, subpar, questionable, all that kind of stuff, they made up for it by the sheer number of episodes that were made, right? With 22 to 24, like I said. So with 10 episodes, are you really able to explore the engineering section of a starship? Are you really able to go into the backstory fully of a lot of your characters? Are you able to do really good character development? Are you really able to build any type of world when you're doing a 10 episode series? So that being said, was this Star Trek, Starfleet Academy, was it Star Trek? Is it something that I consider Star Trek? Now, first of all, I did a video where I talked about examining Star Trek, Starfleet Academy from the perspective of what the stated mission directive is for Star Trek, which is space, the final frontier. His 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilization, and to boldly go where no person has gone before. So when you line up Star Trek, Starfleet Academy to that mission directive, right? Did we explore strange new worlds, right? Did we boldly go anywhere? Did we explore any new cultures, new civilizations, new life, right? Was any of these things explored in the first season of Star Trek canon? And not really, right? So although they had a lot of entertaining episodes, although it would be a show that I would normally sit down and be like, oh, okay, I find this interesting. There are a lot of other science fiction shows that I sit down and find interesting as well, but they're not called Star Trek. Now, the overall storyline of season 1 basically was this family getting separated by the government or Starfleet for the mom doing some bad stuff in conjunction with the pirate played by Paul Giamatti, right? Now, this is a situation where she felt real bad about this. When I say she, Captain Ake, because she was representing the government at the time, and Caleb was the little boy being separated from his mom, all right, who we get to see later in episodes like 8 and 9. Now, that being said, right, Star Trek Starfleet Academy started off on that basis. All right, a family separation. This guy, he grows up, Caleb, he grows up a little bit older. He starts to try to find ways to locate his mom and everything like that, because he ends up escaping Starfleet when he was a little kid. Did we go into what he got into, how he survived, how he got down off of that little platform and out the window, all that kind of stuff? No, it didn't really matter. Okay, cool. But the series didn't really didn't utilize all of the things that it could have utilized in expressing even that theme, right? They had a good speech at the end, but they really didn't want to dive into that as well, right? They was being, like I said, shallow. But the overall theme of the first season, the overall storyline, right? It could have been that grandiose, okay, Caleb looking for his mom, while still being intermixed in a Star Trek world, which, again, I don't think it was. Yeah, I'm going to get into it. The portrayal of the Klingon Jaden. All right, Jaden Strag. Now, there's quite a lot of negative viewpoints when it comes to Jaden from just watching videos and reading articles and stuff like that. And what is that problem? Because Jaden is a gay Klingon, basically, right? This is something that we've never seen in the Klingon diaspora in all of Star Trek canon. Not even something that has hinted at something like that, right? That being said, it was an interesting choice to make Jaden that way. They could have made him the doctor, I don't want to kill anybody, everything like that. I want to, I want to use my warriorness to save lives, right? And they could have, made another character, somebody in canon that, a race in canon that would have been more historically fitting for that role, right? Instead of a Klingon, right? That's just kind of an odd choice for them to have made. And I think that that brought a lot of negativity towards the show that was very much undue. All right, another thing, the hybridation of most of the species in Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Now, look, a lot of people talk about the burn and all that kind of stuff and how it separated, stranded species together, and they had no choice but to, okay. First of all, you guys got to understand that for a lot of species to procreate in Star Trek canon, you need a doctor for genetic manipulation. Hell, even Dax and Worf needed that. They needed Julian. All right, so you just can't be willy-nilly having all of these different hybridizations going on during the time and it be successful. All right, you guys got to kind of really understand that about Star Trek canon. Now, some may say that, okay, well, the progenitors, seeded the galaxy with their DNA, which means that everybody who's a humanoid should be able to, oh, okay. Yeah, but that was billions of years ago, and evolution has caused a lot of races to not be able to procreate with each other without, again, genetic intervention, genetic help, some type of external assistance. I didn't particularly like all of the expressions of hybridation in this. Why? Because it took away from the essence of each of the cultures that we could have explored in Star Trek canon. We didn't really even explore the duality of the hybrids in the series. Like, we got all these hybrids, but we didn't really get into, okay, well, were you choosing this side of, or this side of the family? Okay, it was just a normal thing, and that's something that I wish that if they were going to put as something normal in Star Trek, that they would have introduced some more species that whose cultures that we could have latched on to, or more thoroughly fleshed out how these hybridations came into effect. Another thing that I find weird is the ease of the fall of the Federation. Okay, and after the burn, right? Because warp drive went down and all this kind of stuff. You can tell me that member worlds seceded and all this kind of stuff from the Federation. Let me tell you something. Of all the catastrophes that the Federation has endured and faced and overcome, I find it hard to believe that the burn would have splintered the Federation like it did. If anything, they would have worked harder to try to reestablish those contacts and communications by exploring some of those other alternative forms of propulsion, which I've done a lot of videos about, which they didn't really even cover in Star Trek Starfleet Academy, except for that one episode where they were trying to modify Romulan technology singularity drives, and they end up messing up. Okay, well, continue on. That's the Star Trek way. Hell, even the Pegasus, when they was under threat of being, found out because of the Treaty of Algernon, they was going back to get the phase cloak so that they can what? Modify it so it could work. That is the tenets of the Federation. So in closing of this video, right? I didn't really consider season 1 Star Trek Starfleet Academy Star Trek, but I did enjoy a lot of the episodes that they put forth. When I say not like Trek, think of Orville and think of how their stories take place, the dynamics of the crew, seeking out new life, new civilization, boldly going. That's why people consider Orville, a different dimension, parallels Star Trek, right? So, although this season wasn't really something I considered Star Trek, I did find, like I said, find some of the episodes in the training. Vox in itself so stood out. I really dug it. So in closing, I'd just like to say that I enjoyed a lot of the episodes of Star Trek Starfleet Academy Season 1. Was it Star Trek, I didn't really consider it Star Trek, probably because it wasn't what I was expecting. Even still, when I put it against the mission statement of Star Trek, is still, fell short of that. So I don't feel too bad about saying I don't really consider it Star Trek. But I consider it an all right show. Great production, great score, a lot of great acting from a lot of the cast members. Standouts: Holly Hunter, Sam, Paul Giamatti. I really dug it. It was nice to see the Doctor again. Look, I kind of look forward to season 2 to see what they're going to be coming up with. I understand that Star Trek Starfleet Academy is going to be getting canceled after season 2, and I'm going to be making a video about my thoughts on that as well. But anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys thought of Star Trek Starfleet Academy season 1. What was your guys' favorite episode? What was some episodes that you guys thought needed a little work, or expressed some themes that you guys aligned with? Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And as always, peace, recycle, and say the whales. You guys be cool.